The FHSM-318 mini sewing machine has a reverse function, which is really nice. Now this is a lock stitch machine, and a lot of mini sewing machines you have to reverse your fabric, turn your fabric around to lock in that stitch so that it doesn't come off. Otherwise you could just also tie a knot. But this machine, like larger size machines, actually has a reverse function. So this is forward right there, and this is reverse. And if I bring it in here as I turn my knob, if you look down at your feed dogs, you'll be able to see them move to put that reverse and forward stitch into motion. Okay, so let's demo this out. I've got some this is like a cotton, maybe a poly mix woven fabric, and I've actually layered it to be eight layers thick. So we'll see how it does on the thickness of the fabric. So I'm going to put it under my presser foot and let's try out the reverse function. Okay, so because I've made my fabric so thick, I want to use the longest stitch length. So you can see the real tiny stitch there, and this gets a little longer and longest. So because my fabric is so thick, because I have folded it, I want to use the longest stitch length. And you're also going to do that when you reverse it. You'll see the different stitch lengths in reverse, and then that way your reverse stitch is just as long as your forward stitch. Right there where you see that 0, that is where your machine will just keep stitching right in the same spot, and that is really beneficial for putting buttons on your clothes. Okay, so let's try it out here. I'm in the slow position, going to be stitching slow, and I do not have batteries. I'm working on electric, so I have that on it's just off. Okay, so I've got my foot pedal here, and it's always a good idea on any machine to just make that first stitch by rotating your hand wheel downwards and just getting that needle into the fabric. You can even make a couple stitches if you want, but I find just getting it in the fabric is beneficial. Okay, so let's go forward. Okay, I always like to stop with my thread take-up lever in the highest position so that I know that my stitch is complete. So now I'm going to just go backwards so that my stitches lock. And again, I'm choosing the longest stitch length because my fabric is really thick, and I want the stitch length size to match to the forward stitches that I just did. Okay, so going backwards. Alrighty, and I'm going to put that back into forward again. Okay, I'm pretty impressed actually with how well it's going through this 8 layers of fabric right here. And to lock those stitches, I'm just going to put it back to the reverse and press my foot pedal, and then go back on forward and stitch to the end. Okay. To take your fabric out, make sure that you turn your hand wheel towards you and get your take-up lever to the highest position so that your stitch completes the stitch cycle. If you don't take that take-up lever to the highest position, you're actually right in the middle of making a stitch, and a lot of times things will get all tangled up, and you'll wonder like what on earth is happening. Okay, now to get your fabric out, just pull on your thread right here. Just yank a piece, and that is going to give you enough thread to be able to get your project out. So lift up your presser foot. Presser foot lifter is in the back there. And it's always a good idea. This needle is threaded from the left to the right, so it's always a good idea to actually remove your project from the left to the right. That way your thread is going in the direction that it's threaded, and it doesn't put any unnecessary pull on your needle, which can actually start bending your needle and rendering it useless. Okay, now that we got our project out, we have a handy dandy thread cutter on the side. Right there. Oh, another little function that we've got here is a light. So there's where your light turns off and on. And so there's the little thread cutter. And the really cool thing about thread cutters on your machine is it gives you like the perfect length of thread so that when you go to start sewing, your threads don't get eaten by your feed dog area. So just cut that. Oh, it works very well. That cut it right off. Okay, and let's take a look at what we've got here. Okay, so you can see where I have stitched forward and reverse on both sections. And boy, the stitches look fantastic. And again, that is 8 layers of fabric, and the tension looks really, really good. The tension is completely even on both sides. So yeah, so the benefits of, again, having that reverse stitch is that you don't have to manually turn your fabric. And I've done a video on that on my other mini sewing machine. So if you're not familiar with turning it manually, you can just scroll back on my page and find that video. Alright, so overall, I'm pretty impressed with those results for a mini sewing machine.